Hello, fellow humans. Chris here again. So, today I wanted to talk about COVID 19 and the flu and how those two are the same or not the same. I'm going to do this because I received a comment that said, "You are an ass who knows nobody with COVID. It is a political lie. It is a normal flu." Okay, so ignoring the fact that saying I know nobody with COVID when I personally been involved in the administration of literally over 500,000 people for COVID 19 um, is absurd. But aside from that, okay, let's grant the premise. The COVID 19 is the flu. All right, fine. So let's look at the flu a little bit for a second. So the quote normal flu over the past 10 years has roughly taken about 36,000 American lives per year, and that's a general rough estimate. Some years is closer to 80,000, but this is the CDC numbers. Now, the normal flu is kind of a misnomer because the flu in and of itself, it mutates. That's part of the defining factor of what the flu is. It mutates every year. This is why you have to get vaccinated for it every year. This is why we don't actually have herd immunity for the flu, because the vaccine does not work permanently. And we only have about 50% of the population that gets vaccinated per year for the flu. The other part of it is the flu has variations. Aside from the mutations that happen every year, it can affect animals. And when it affects animals, particularly when it affects birds and pigs, it can then be transmitted to humans and sometimes can cause a big problem. The reason being, we don't have the same antibodies that the animals have, and so when it transmits to us, we're not prepared to fight it, even if we were vaccinated for the flu that year. The Spanish flu of 1918 estimates show roughly 20 to 50 million people died from the Spanish flu. Part of the characteristics of the flu, by way of the mutations that exist and the fact that you have to get a separate vaccine every year, lends itself to these situations of potentials for massive pandemics of the flu. Now, why am I saying all this? I think that a lot of the people that call COVID 19 just the flu, and we've heard that a lot over the last year, I know I have, they're in an ironic way illustrating the severity of COVID by failing to recognize the severity of the flu. The flu, we may never have herd immunity against the flu because of the way it mutates. COVID 19 is actually better than the flu in terms of our ability to handle it, to take control of it. If people get the vaccine, if everybody that is eligible to get the vaccine would get the vaccine, we would reach herd immunity from COVID 19. If everybody got the vaccine for the flu, we would not reach herd immunity for the flu because next season the mutations would come in and we would get another seasonal flu. So I would suggest that if you're going to insult me and tell me that my knowledge of COVID 19 is wrong and that COVID-19 is simply a normal flu, I would recommend you educate yourself a little bit on what the flu actually is, and realize that by saying that COVID is just the flu, you're actually showing that COVID is pretty serious, because quite frankly, in a vacuum, in a world where people educated themselves and took the mitigating steps that they needed to take, the flu would be worse than COVID. And you're upgrading COVID to the flu. We don't even have herd immunity for the flu. We don't even have a permanent vaccine. We have that for COVID. Go and get your shot. Go ahead and call me an ass. That's fine. But then go and get your shot. Do your part to try to help the people of your community. It can be done. And I think people are starting to get tired of this idea that we're going to be victimized by something that can be controlled, because some people are just too stubborn to educate themselves, or they just don't care. They don't have compassion until it affects them. Anyway, I'll be catching up with y'all again very soon. Have a great rest of your day. Remember, don't be afraid to question the consensus.